When it comes to the MCU, everyone is celebrated in their roles. Each of the characters is embodied so perfectly by their actors that you could never imagine anyone else playing these roles again. But not all the performances are so perfect. And in this video, we have a sizzling hot take for you. What if Chris Hemsworth isn't actually a great Thor? What if we could do better? Relax, guys. Don't pick up your hammers and axes just yet. Hear us out. Here's the thing. Chris Hemsworth is great at playing a particular kind of Thor, and that's the one we currently have. This Thor was basically rebooted by Taika Waititi in Thor Ragnarok to be a himbo who doesn't have much room left for the brain underneath all that brawn, and that's exactly the character Taika needed for his take on the Thor movies. But think back to before Taika became the steward of the Thor franchise, when the world was slagging off the first Thor and declared The Dark World to be the worst MCU movie ever. No one was highlighting Hemsworth as a diamond in the rough. By contrast, say what you will about Captain America's first outing or Iron Man's second, their respective stars got heaps of praise for being the perfect casting they were. The relationship between an actor and their character is important. When movies in a franchise have different screenwriters and directors, you need to lean on the actor's insight into the character to maintain consistent character writing. Taking the example of Cap and Iron Man again, those characters were enjoyable no matter who directed or wrote the movies. But Thor was different in his own movies compared to his Avenger appearances pre-Taika. If anything, Loki was more consistently and enjoyably written than Thor himself. Considering the trajectory that Kenneth Branagh and Alan Taylor had left these characters on, we can totally imagine Loki being a mainstay of the MCU. But Thor? The Dark World could have been the end of him getting solo movies. When you look at it this way, you realize that Taika had to reboot the Thor franchise to save it. And don't get us wrong, Thor Ragnarok was a fantastic movie. Not only was it a great outing for Thor himself, it was a treat for fans of the Hulk, and it introduced us to Valkyrie and Korg. We also got some amazing character development for Loki and his relationship with his brother. We said goodbye to Odin and Hela and Asgard itself, but it was a far cry from the more Shakespearean vibe of the previous movies. In fact, Taika has implied that his take on Thor was a parody of sorts of the previous movies. But if we're being really honest, that's the vibe that better suits the Thor franchise than the zaniness of Taika's approach. In fact, Taika's dismissiveness of the entire Norse mythology angle of the Thor franchise has ruled out some of the best Thor storylines in the comics. We got an unfortunate taste of Taika's unsustainable style for the Thor franchise in Love and Thunder. No one behind the camera seems to be happy with how this movie turned out. It got mixed reviews from critics and underperformed at the box office. It was also a huge waste of Gore the God Butcher, a serious character who honestly deserved a better movie. And for real, did they actually pitch Christian freaking Bale against Chris Hemsworth? The fact that Taika and Chris were surprised Love and Thunder's credits ended with a Thor will return really tells you everything you need to know. While MCU fans might not be willing to let this duo go yet, they're feeling finished with this franchise themselves. Just last year, Hemsworth was talking about playing Thor for years and years, and now he has resigned at the end of his tenure. Maybe it's about time that tenure ended after all. We have some ideas about who should step into Hemsworth's shoes. But first, what does the future of the Thor franchise look like? Now we're venturing into spoiler territory for Thor Love and Thunder. If you haven't seen it yet, be warned. That movie ends with Love, the superpowered daughter of Gore, being raised by Thor as his own. They're traveling the galaxy together and saving lives whenever the saving is needed. In other words, they're more daddy-daughter guardians than Norse gods. It's looking pretty clear that at some point, Love will inhabit the space that Thor will leave. Thor is returning for now though, so this switch won't happen anytime soon. For all we know, Thor might bow out of the franchise altogether at the end of Phase 6. Much like the rest of the Marvel Trinity did in Endgame. It's looking pretty clear though that Taika is done with the MCU, and Hemsworth has said that he'll only stay as long as Taika does. Without Taika and Hemsworth, no director would try to recreate the humor of Ragnarok or Love and Thunder. It would be like someone trying to imitate James Gunn at the helm of a Guardians movie. The next captain of the Thor ship would definitely steer it towards a more serious direction, and we don't think Hemsworth would be the right Thor for that direction anyway. A recast seems to be in order. Who could step into the divine boots of the God of Thunder? In today's post-Northman world, we have to give some consideration to Alexander Skarsgård. Prince Amleth from the Northmen is a huge leap from the charismatic Thor we've seen in the MCU, but keep in mind that Alex can do more than just one role. Though he kinda got his start in Hollywood because of his last name, he's been in a number of high-profile projects. These include cheesier roles like True Blood and Succession to critical darlings like Melancholia and The Northman. That last one might just earn him his first Oscar nomination, so he's clearly got the talent and stands poised to receive his big break. Headlining the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be just the thing to celebrate his name on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It'll also be an interesting coincidence, since his dad Stellan played Eric Selvig in this very franchise. There is no reason that Marvel shouldn't consider him for this, or any other role. It's possible that Skarsgård will be the one to need the convincing, since Thor will cast a huge shadow over his schedule. After all, we haven't seen Hemsworth in a lot of non-MCU movies. If Skarsgård thinks that he can build a future for himself through smaller scale projects like Melancholia or The Northman, he may not be interested in the MCU, but we can dream. For an actor who has experience with big franchises, how about Alexander Ludwig? Two Alexanders in the same video? A coincidence indeed, but you probably didn't even notice it because you're so shocked by our suggestion of Kato as Thor. Again, hear us out. Ludwig was experienced with Viking roles too, and his is a lot more relevant to the job of playing Thor. As Bjorn Ironside, Ludwig was often compared to the Shakespearean version of Thor from the pre-Taika days. Since we're suggesting that Thor slide into a middle ground between his current goofball persona and the more serious one from before, that makes Ludwig an easy choice. He also has experience with acting in major movie franchises, thanks to his Hunger Games experience. The problem with this casting is that he's currently starring in the Starz TV series Heels. Acting opposite Stephen Amell, the show portrays the real-life feud between two brothers who both work in the wrestling business. The show has been renewed for a second season, so Ludwig might be busy for a while. Finally, here's an off-the-wall idea. Christopher Hivju. Wait, is that Tormund Giantsbane from Game of Thrones? It sure is. We really think that having Tormund in the MCU makes sense, since he was basically an R-rated version of Thor. And as a Game of Thrones alumnus, his acting abilities are definitely in no doubt. Not that it would be a huge challenge to go from Tormund to Thor. You'd have to cut down on the naughty jokes, but he's already had a ton of experience playing a loud and boisterous bruiser with undying loyalty. He was even best friends with a Captain America type who had a heart of gold and constantly struggled between his commitment to duty and his desires. We're pretty sure he's used some hammer-looking weapons too. The comparison writes itself. It's not like the MCU has never poached actors from HBO's old cash cow before. Bringing Tormund into the MCU would reunite him with Jon Snow, and even introduce him to Robb Stark. You know, if they reverse that one bit of Eternals. Christopher has a similar problem to a lot of the actors from that show. He's become so strongly associated with it that the roles seem to have dried up. What's Feige waiting for? Chris is available for immediate joining. That's it for this video. We know the idea of replacing Chris Hemsworth is a controversial one, but we're sure someone in the comments section agrees with us, and those people will also tell us what they think of our casting choices and share their own ideas. But whatever you think of this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.